It gets to idle pretty quick. Sandway one, it turns on. The fans go, I guess, at full speed for a few seconds there, and then they bring themselves back down. The Sandway one is a little louder because I guess having the fifth fan there, as you guys can see there.
Before and after pictures on the website and thought to myself, you know what, I'm 48 years old, my face is starting to look a little bit aged, wouldn't hurt to try. So after 30 days, I could not believe my before and after picture. I literally rolled back the hands of time 10 years. And the best way I can explain this product is it's like something you've never experienced. You have about 40 pounds of resistance right there. Now I'm pushing that down as
What do we have here? What's up, guys? Welcome back to Life of Bliss. Today we have another unboxing video, which means I got something pretty cool to show you guys, which also means that my wife's probably a little upset because I've been spending money, but that's okay. I have to deal with it, you don't, so let's just get into the unboxing. So this is a Sennheiser FP20000Q Pro amplifier. This is a company from China. I reached out to them and spoke with Dan, one of the sales reps, and she was very helpful getting everything set up and shipped out to me. This actually shipped in just under a week, which is pretty darn fast from China if you ask me. So anyways, this is how it came from China. It's got these sturdy corner protectors on there. It's got a little bit of damage to the box. It's got a little gouge up there, a little rip up top. So I think it should be okay though. I mean, this is, you can tell it's very full of some sort of packing material. So let's go ahead and see what is inside. Alright, yeah, like I said, there is a big old thick piece of cardboard in here, so I'm sure everything is protected in here. Alright, so right off the bat, you got your operator's manual in here. And here's the bad boy himself. First impressions, it's heavy. Let's get rid of you. This puppy is big. All right, there it is. The Sennheiser FP20000Q Pro Audio Amplifier. Let me take a look at this thing. All right, like I said, this thing is pretty heavy. I don't know the exact weight, but I'd say about 25 pounds or so, maybe pushing 30. I mean, it's a pretty beefy amplifier. So like I was saying earlier, this is a 4-channel amplifier. It does 2,250 watts times 4 channels at 8 ohms. And get this, does 4,000 watts times 4 channels at 4 ohms max power. So with all of that, I decided to go ahead and get the 240 volt option to really utilize the amplifier to its max potential. It does come with a standard US 110 or 120 volt option as well. But like I said, to really utilize the amp's biggest potential, I got the 240 volt option to give it some extra juice.
So here's a quick look at the front panel of the FP20000Q. There are 4 dials to adjust the gain for each channel, a power display and clip meter, and an on-off and remote turn-on switch off to the right. Along the back side there is a line out, gain and voltage limiter switch, XLR inputs, and speak-on connector outputs.
So just initial impression on the outside, again, this thing looks very well put together. It's very sturdy, all the connections look nice, the front panel looks nice. The power cable is thick and it's pliable. I mean, everything's looking good so far, so let's go ahead and open it up.
tấm ở đâu vậy hả?
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. What's up, man? It's Wasi again. All right, so we got a little intriguing video that we're going to be doing today. A lot of questions being asked, a lot of speculation out there, so on and so forth. Me personally, you know, well, anybody that knows me, I don't really endorse a lot of things. Especially when it comes to like electronics, man, because sometimes stuff comes out and it's garbage. When they first come out, everybody's jumping on the bandwagon and talking highly of things. And, you know, I always play the backdrop until I actually get my hands on the item, you know, test it out, see what's going on. It happened with the Behringers. Like, everybody was like, yo, these iNukes are amazing and this and that and the other thing. And I'm like, you know, threw them on the bench and took a look. I was like, not really. You know, so it just took a little bit of time before everybody started to realize that, you know, it was a lot of smoke and mirrors. So same thing with the, you know, I call them the crab groupings, the fake lab groupings. They're all right. They play extremely well when they're working. The only problem with those amplifiers was the fact that, you know, if you had a bad day and you give them a dirty look, they would just stop working. You know what I'm saying? They were like extremely sensitive. If you looked at them the wrong way, they just cut off on you. You know what I mean? So obviously I never really endorsed those because they were in the field failing like crazy. You know what I mean? But this is a different scenario, right? We got a CVR D3002. Now, I've been watching this company for a little while, watching their amplifiers or whatever that they came out with. The smart thing that they did is they didn't try to copy another amplifier and then slap their name on it or just try to make it identical to something else. They actually took the technology that was already in existence and, you know, incorporated that into the manufacture of their own amp. You see what I'm saying? So they created their own product, but before they came to market, it appears, you know, and I say appears, they did a good amount of research, and they spent some time putting this amplifier together. So, you know, I said, you know what, let me do a side-by-side, ran them on the bench, whatever. The power output of these CVRs is extremely good. My only sticking point with any product is the reliability and, you know, the capability of the product. So as far as reliability is concerned, man, these CVRs are not failing. This is the first one that I'm looking at, you know what I mean? Because, you know, everybody that knows me know that this is what I do. I do electronic repair, power soft, lab grouping, any amplifier that's out there, I could repair it, old to new. But haven't had any real CVRs come in the shop because they're not really failing. Even this one that failed, it's not really the fault of the, hold on one second. It wasn't really the fault of the amplifier, you know what I mean? This one basically got hooked up to some funny power, and it kind of damaged it. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the amplifier failed, because anything that's out there, if you hook it up to the wrong thing, it's not going to work. You know what I mean? It's going to have an issue. So this one got a little bit of bad power, and that's what caused it to go down. But you know, it wasn't like a catastrophic failure. Like some of the amplifiers and items that are out there, if you have anything go wrong with them, they just burn up. The whole thing just burns up. But that wasn't the case. It hit a section of the power supply and took that down, but that was it. So I guess what I'm trying to say, I'm looking at the build quality, and you guys could see it here. The build quality of the CVR is extremely good. I mean, extremely good. I mean, I've taken this thing apart, looked at it top to bottom, and it's extremely similar to one of the amplifiers that I rated very highly, which is the PowerSoft. This is a K20, by the way. So this is a K20. I mean, this one is also in for repair, but if you look at the build quality, I look at the actual amount of spacing between the boards, how neat the components are. You know, they're stacked at the same height. You know, like some of the old fake lab groupings, man, you would have parts leaning to the right, leaning to the left. You know, they look like they were doing a cha-cha slide inside the amp. You know what I'm saying? So when I see stuff like that, I don't think very highly of the product. But this is a CVR guts right here. And as you can see, man, it's extremely neat. It's well put together. They're using good components. You know, so, you know, kudos to CVR, man. They came out with a good amp. The amplifier has a different fan topology. They don't use the, you know, the flat fans like what's being used in the K series. They're using the fans that are similar to what's being used in the X series. The X series uses these type of fans, the stand-up block fans. And this one has a total of 5, which is a good amount of ventilation. So the actual airflow in the amp is going to be very good. They're being used in Carnival. Carnival was a testing ground. I took a step back and just, you know, waited to see what would happen. But you had guys that were using them in Carnival playing double 21s, you know, at 2 ohms and beating them from, you know, Juve to Carnival back to back, and they didn't blow. So I was like, you know, that raised my eyebrow right there. I said, well, wait a minute. None of them blew? You know, so I said, all right, let me take a closer look at these amplifiers or whatever. So real quick, I'm showing you the inside of both amps. This is the K20, right? Looks nice, looks very clean, but this is an Italian amp versus this is the CVR, which is a Chinese amp. And the difference is obviously the price. The Chinese amp, you could get this amp for like about $1,000. This one, if you were to buy it retail and not buying it as a export amp, it's about $5,000. So that's a huge difference in price, in the price differential. So that's the first thing. The other thing that I noticed, I have 2 boards here. This is out of a PowerSoft. You know, you can see the board is, you know, very well made, very clean. You know what I mean? The solder points and everything is you know, it's done very well. So that's what you would expect from an expensive, uber expensive Italian amp. But then you go to the CVR board here. This one is damaged, so don't look at the dark stuff. That's just the damage that it had. You look at this board. This board is also very well made, very clean, very well put together. You look at the back of the board, the solder points and everything. I mean, it's impeccable. No, you know, solder over here, solder over there, bad solder connections, whatever. So the amp, this board right here, I would say is on par with this PowerSoft board, but at 1/5 the cost for the amplifier. So, you know, that's something to really take a look at, because the amplifiers are out there, they're playing well, they're not failing, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. You look in here, you see there's a lot more spacing right here versus the PowerSoft, and that's for obvious reasons. The spacing here is because there's no display. Just to give you a heads up, the display in a lot of amplifiers is always the weak point. Same thing with the crowns and the PowerSoft. The displays typically have issues after a certain amount of time, and they could cause the amplifier to go down, even though there's nothing really wrong with the amplifier. But you don't have a display, you can't see what's going on, you can't control anything. So that's why, you know, this was a smart move by CVR. They don't have a display in here. And if you think about it, the PowerSoft X series, they don't have displays either, because they, you know, it's kind of like, you know, a lesson learned type of thing. So that's the physical mechanics of both amp. So I would say they're basically on par with each other as far as build quality is concerned. Components. If the one thing I want to point out, this is the power supply for the CVR. This is the power supply for the PowerSoft K20. You see, the power supply in the K20 is much larger. The CVR's power supply is smaller, right? Now, I'm going to show you the difference in what CVR did versus PowerSoft. On the CVR amplifier, the power supply, it has 18 capacitors. So these are the capacitors right here. So it has a total of 18, right? So if you were to count them out, you got a total of 18. You go all the way back here, and these guys over here, you got a total of 18. You look at the PowerSoft power supply, that one has a total of 54 capacitors, right? So you got this bank right here, all of these guys right here, and all of these caps right here in the PowerSoft. So this right here is what holds your voltage and allows the amplifier to charge back up every time you drop a bass signal or whatever. It's called slew rate, which is the amount of, you know, time it takes to recharge all the caps every time a signal, you know, starts to deplete the capacity of the amplifier's charging. The slew rate is how fast it can recover. So that's what you know, that's what actually holds the actual charge for the amplifier. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out is because CVR did a little bit differently. PowerSoft, they put a lot of their capacitance in the power supply. CVR is not a lot of capacitance in the power supply, but what I like about what CVR did, they put a huge amount of capacitance in the output channels. So if you look at, this is the output board of the power supply, I mean of the PowerSoft, sorry. So this is the output board. You notice it's a lot less capacitors on the output board. The other thing you'll notice is it's one output board. That one output board plays both channels, right? So on the output board of the PowerSoft K20, you have 16, right? 16 capacitors for the entire output board, and that's for both sides. 8 per channel. So that's the output board of the PowerSoft. You got 16 caps. What CVR did, which is something that I like, they split the output boards. So if one channel goes down, this board is what you would change or repair. The other channel goes down, this board is the one that you would change or repair. If you notice on the CVR, this one channel, right, this output channel, which is what plays your speakers, this one channel has 56 capacitors. 56. Once again, this is the PowerSoft K20. This is the output board, which the capacitance is shared. You got, you know, 8 per side or whatever. This is 16 on the output board of the PowerSoft K20, right? On the CVR D3002, this is one board for one channel, and it has 56 capacitors. That's what's going to hold your charge, and when your amplifier is beating the heck out of some 21s at 2 ohms, this is what's standing up to keep it going. You know what I mean? So this is one board, one channel. This is the other board, the other channel. I like that, because if one board blows, you take out that one board and repair it, you still have this other board over here. With the PowerSoft, it's a little different. If one channel blows, you take out this whole board, but now you've basically removed both channels, the right and the left. So whatever channel's blown, you still have to take out the whole module. with the CVR, if this one blows, you just take this one out. If this one blows, you just take that one out. So that's one of the other differences with the CVR that I kind of liked. And just to wrap it up real quick, now the difference is in the power. You got the 3002 right here. At 2 ohms, you're at, just trying to make sure you can see that, 7,140 watts, right? Now the difference is you go to the K20, which is here, at 2 ohms on the K20, you're at 9,000 watts. So you have a differential in power, yeah, but I mean, do you need 9,000 watts to play 418s? You know what I mean? Or 221s? Not necessarily. And when you look at the price point, you got, 5,000 if you're buying it retail, 3,000 and something if you're buying it for international. But that's basically what it is. So if you have the dollars to spend and you like the Italian make or whatever, hey, go ahead and go with the K20. But with an amplifier that's basically able to do the same thing, same build quality, everything else, and the reliability is there. That was my main thing when it comes to some of these Chinese amps, if they're reliable. But this amp is reliable, man, and I'll endorse it, which is something I don't like to do. But after seeing the product and what it can do, the way it's made, I give a thumbs up to the CVR. All right. So anybody have any questions, hit me up. I know there's some questions rolling on the live, but I'm not able to answer while I'm talking. But I'll try to answer them once I get off of here. All right. So this is Wasi, side by side, power soft, CVR. CVR looks great. The build quality is great. Same with the power soft. The only difference is the price. All right. Have a blessed day. Peace.
Hi, I'm Paul Hugo and I'm with Marshank Sales, and we're here today to give you an inside look at the new PowerSoft X4 amplifier just introduced. We're going to take it apart for you. We've actually already removed the screws along the side so that we can show you these rear support and rack support rails. You've got rear support that sticks out the back side of the amp, and this of course forms part of the rack here at the front. We're also going to take off the front, not just because we're going to disassemble it, but also this is how you're going to get to your filter to clean it. Those two Allen screws are used to attach. They're captured, obviously. You can see there. And then you've got access to your filter here. We'll just put this on a little bit just to kind of hold it in place. And then we've also removed in advance one screw that's right behind the front panel in the center of the front and the rear. And with that, I can remove the lid. One note before I put the lid away, one thing they contemplated when they designed this was no screws going through the top to hold it down. That means no holes in the top. That means that if liquid were ever to be spilled on the top, it wouldn't have an entry point to get inside. Along with the screws that we've already mentioned along the sides and front and back, there's a magnet in place here that will also draw the top down. This is a pre-production model. I understand that there will also be a magnet here, and I think maybe a magnet up here. So now to the layout of the amplifier. This area here is our DSP section. Underneath this top board, which you can see, there's a Dante Brooklyn board that lies underneath. And anybody that's familiar with the Brooklyn board knows that it's their full-on board. So this amplifier is not only able to do Dante, redundant Dante today, but it's ready for any future networking protocols that may come along. Here we have channels 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 of the output section, Just a note about the X8, which is the 2U 8-channel version of the same amplifier. In that model, these are turned on their edge so that we can fit 2 more in. So that gives us, 4 sets of 2 or 8 channels. And also that 2U gives us extra height for our 4th and final section here, which is the power supply section. As you can see, we've got plenty of capacitors for power storage. This is the latest generation of PowerSoft's power supply technology, which is a big part of the secret to their very special amplifiers. Back at the rear, we have 2 conventional small and rather quiet fans. See another video that's coming up for Operation Fan Noise. We'll do a video on that later. But these 2 fans draw the air through this filter up at the front, through the electronics, and out the rear, of course. And with that, I think you can take a look here. That's a pretty thorough but quick look at the inside of a PowerSoft X4.
Hello, I'm Luca Giorgi from PowerSoft, the Pro Audio Business Unit Manager, and I'm here at Pro Light and Sound 2014 in Frankfurt for a big event, or let's say another event from PowerSoft to innovate, to bring innovation technology to the audio industry. We launched today one new series called X Series, which consists of 2 models, one 8 channels and one 4 channels, X8 and X4, that we consider another step along the innovation path in audio amplification, because we consider this an all-in-one tool that is completely replacing a typical rec touring configuration. And the reason for this is that the amplifier integrates in itself a power distro, a patch bay unit, and a powerful processing and amplification platform. This is the 6th generation of power supply, switch mode power supply, that PowerSoft is bringing to the market. And this time we probably exceed even our own expectations. In fact, we can say that this is a truly universal power supply, because essentially it can work in single phase, dual phase, 3-phase, in delta or star configuration, independently from what the mains what kind of mains is available. In fact, the power supply can adapt itself to any conditions. For example, a typical example is you are using a 3-phase connection and you lose the neutral line. In that case, the amplifier will simply consider this event and will continue working in the same way. The typical input acceptance of the amplifier is enormous and is adding another level of flexibility, because you have 8 analog input, 4 stereo digital AES3 inputs, and then you have 2 Dante streams. All these inputs can be handled by an internal matrix that can not only select which channel, but also mix among different inputs and then forward the result of this operation to any output, including one of the Dante stream that can be used as an input for other amplifier. So essentially, you are completely replacing a patching unit in this case. In terms of power, it is a typical Class D output stage, and each channel can provide 5,200 watt per channel into 2 ohm, or 3,000 watt per channel into 4 ohm, and each couple of channel is bridgeable. So again, it's a level of power that can allow the user to drive whatever PA he can have available in a very flexible way. There is a big processing unit that is ready and prepared for future application. For example, application tools for taking into account the interaction between the PA and the environment, which means, for example, reverberation tools, reflection, absorbing the reflection from the venue, these kind of things that maybe nowadays we cannot even think, but obviously in our mind this is the platform that will represent the future for the next 10-15 years, and so we had to put inside something that is future-proof. Thank you very much.
Welcome at KV2 Audio and SLA, Super Live Audio Technology. My name is Stefano Trevisan, and with
line arrays have dramatically improved the reproduction of sound for large audiences. The associated software has also evolved to a stage where the performance of complete PA systems can be comprehensively simulated. While this is already a huge improvement to the situation from before, arrays can still be optimized further to provide an even better tonal balance and level distribution. This goes beyond what is achievable with precise mechanical aiming alone and relies on the individual processing of every box in the array. D&B's approach to this technology is called array processing. To use array processing effectively, correct venue data and meaningful splay angles are required. The vertical dispersion of an array depends on its length and mechanical shape. It is also frequency dependent. This means that the tonal balance, or spectral distribution, and the level, or spatial distribution, cannot be completely consistent. This fact is visualized in the level over distance plot in ArrayCalc. The tonal balance is only consistent in areas where the two frequency lines are parallel. Mathematically, a solution can be derived that makes the tonal balance completely consistent. Let's investigate this for 3 example frequencies. To achieve constant level for a given frequency over the audience area, the array would need to have a specific mechanical configuration. However, to achieve exactly the same result, even for a neighboring frequency, the array's shape would have to be completely different. Obviously, a real-world array can only have one given mechanical shape at a time. Still, by applying complex FIR filters to each cabinet individually, the equivalent of the required mechanical shape can be achieved virtually. This purely mathematical approach has been tried, but the results did not meet our sonic expectations. Instead, the processing is calculated in a way that morphs along the array rather than making sudden and drastic changes. This means that the virtual shape of the array is transitioning smoothly between frequencies, resulting in the sonic footprint known from D&B. So, what is array processing actually doing? When a room model and the array designs are finalized in ArrayCalc, the array processing option can be enabled, which triggers the analysis process. The performance of an array is analyzed for a large number of receive points along all listening planes within its coverage. For every receive point, the sound of every loudspeaker is calculated across 240 individual frequency bands. The optimization process evaluates a predefined target frequency response, user-definable settings for level over distance, and processing emphasis. The result is a clever combination of FIR and IIR filters for each individual cabinet. This method keeps the additional system delay for array processing at just 5.9 milliseconds. So, what are the benefits and most important effects? With array processing, an array creates a constant tonal balance throughout its entire coverage with a user-definable level distribution. This is done by redistributing energy from areas where the sound is too loud to areas where more SPL is needed. Array processing also provides seamless compensation of air absorption at high frequencies. Array processing uses a general target frequency response for all arrays in a project, meaning that different arrays, for example main hang and outfill, will generate the same spectral result at the listener, despite having different length, splice settings, or even speaker type. Array processing adapts and evens out the vertical directivity, which can result in a more consistent direct-to-diffuse sound ratio and enhanced intelligibility, especially in reverberant spaces. Array processing improves the D&B line array system performance significantly and is the next level of democracy for listeners. Line arrays have dramatically improved the reproduction of sound for large audiences. The associated software has also evolved to a stage where the performance of complete PA systems can be comprehensively simulated. While this is already a huge improvement to the situation from before, arrays can still be optimized further to provide an even better tonal balance and level distribution. This goes beyond what is achievable with precise mechanical aiming alone and relies on the individual processing of every box in the array. D&B's approach to this technology is called array processing. To use array processing effectively, correct venue data and meaningful splay angles are required. The vertical dispersion of an array depends on its length and mechanical shape. It is also frequency dependent. This means that the tonal balance, or spectral distribution, and the level, or spatial distribution, cannot be completely consistent. This fact is visualized in the level over distance plot in ArrayCalc. The tonal balance is only consistent in areas where the two frequency lines are parallel. Mathematically, a solution can be derived that makes the tonal balance completely consistent. Let's investigate this for 3 example frequencies. To achieve constant level for a given frequency over the audience area, the array would need to have a specific mechanical configuration. However, to achieve exactly the same result, even for a neighboring frequency, the array's shape would have to be completely different. Obviously, a real-world array can only have one given mechanical shape at a time. Still, by applying complex FIR filters to each cabinet individually, the equivalent of the required mechanical shape can be achieved virtually. This purely mathematical approach has been tried, but the results did not meet our sonic expectations. Instead, the processing is calculated in a way that morphs along the array rather than making sudden and drastic changes. This means that the virtual shape of the array is transitioning smoothly between frequencies, resulting in the sonic footprint known from D&B. So, what is array processing actually doing? When a room model and the array designs are finalized in ArrayCalc, the array processing option can be enabled, which triggers the analysis process. The performance of an array is analyzed for a large number of receive points along all listening planes within its coverage. For every receive point, the sound of every loudspeaker is calculated across 240 individual frequency bands. The optimization process evaluates a predefined target frequency response, user-definable settings for level over distance, and processing emphasis. The result is a clever combination of FIR and IIR filters for each individual cabinet. This method keeps the additional system delay for array processing at just 5.9 milliseconds. So, what are the benefits and most important effects? With array processing, an array creates a constant tonal balance throughout its entire coverage with a user-definable level distribution. This is done by redistributing energy from areas where the sound is too loud to areas where more SPL is needed. Array processing also provides seamless compensation of air absorption at high frequencies. Array processing uses a general target frequency response for all arrays in a project, meaning that different arrays, for example main hang and outfill, will generate the same spectral result at the listener, despite having different length, splay settings, or even speaker type. Array processing adapts and evens out the vertical directivity, which can result in a more consistent direct-to-diffuse sound ratio and enhanced intelligibility, especially in reverberant spaces. Array processing improves the D&B line array system performance significantly and is the next level of democracy for listeners. Array processing can be used on appropriate D&B line arrays. To use array processing effectively, the venue data and pick point locations must be precise, or the simulation and optimization process will not be accurate. Calibrated inclinometers and flying frames are mandatory, and dual pick points recommended to control the vertical tilt of the array on site. To show the array processing controls, enable them in the pop-out menu of the respective array's dialog. When array processing is enabled, changes in individual cabinet settings are locked. Grouped functions like configuration switches and delay are still available. Also, with array processing, the minimum delay of the respective array is 6.2 milliseconds. Every array can handle 9 user-definable memory slots for different array processing settings and 1 bypass slot that only provides the same throughput delay but no cabinet-specific processing. Press the arrow button to open the array processing dialog. Electroacoustic adjustments can be set individually for each selected array processing slot. The level over distance can be defined in 3 variable slope zones. 2 markers define the transition between zones. Within each zone, the level drop per doubling of distance can be adjusted separately. Individual listening planes can also be offset in level. For example, a stand that has not been sold. Alternatively, a listening plane can be specified as a reflective surface. The array processing algorithm will then reduce the level on that plane as much as possible, This only affects the high mid and high frequencies. This is also the frequency range that typically produces the most noticeable reflections. As a special option, a listening plane can also be set to level avoidance. The algorithm will then try to reduce the level on that plane as much as possible over the widest achievable frequency range. As this is a very extreme setting, it may reduce available headroom significantly. Also, the array will not be phase compatible with other parts of the system anymore. The level avoidance option is not available by default and has to be enabled in ArrayCalc's preferences. To allow for the correct compensation of air absorption effects, both temperature and humidity should be set precisely. Finally, the processing emphasis can be set using the power or glory fader. The default setting of 0 will give a good balance of all parameters and is the recommended starting point. Moving the control towards glory puts more emphasis on meeting the target frequency response and level distribution. Moving it towards power puts more priority on system headroom. The realizer bar constantly indicates how well the current settings can be achieved. A red indication here means that the selected settings are too extreme and processing is denied. If the meter is green or yellow, the calculation can be started. When the optimization process has finished, the respective filter settings are stored in the selected slot. The Result tab then shows the processed and unprocessed frequency responses for a selection of reference points. At this point, it is highly recommended to assign a meaningful name to the slot, as well as a further comment if required. This information will also be visible in the R1 remote control software. The level over distance plot on the sources view now also displays the processed results. The array processing LED in the sources dialog is lit up in green when array processing is active and all settings are OK. It will change to amber when either the venue or the array have been modified and recalculation is required. Before saving the project, it is recommended to check the amplifiers view for the desired loudspeaker to amplifier assignment. A detailed array processing reference is also available in the help section that can be opened by pressing F1. For array processing to work, the firmware of all related amplifiers and R1 have to be updated to the latest version, and the remote network has to be set up using OCA. The array processing enabled version of R1 features a new system view to manage the array processing slot data. It can be opened if all amplifiers are connected and equipped with a compatible firmware. R1 is online and set to tuning mode. All sources containing array processing data appear on the left. The right-hand side shows the respective slot information. To send the slot data to the amplifiers, simply select the desired source on the left, the preferred slot number on the right, and click Send Selected Slot Data. If multiple slots or multiple sources are available, their data can be sent with just one click. To enable array processing, go to the remote view of the respective array. It contains recall buttons for all array processing slots, as well as all slot information. A recall of slots is only possible if all addressed amplifier channels contain valid data. Slot 1 is always labeled bypass. It provides the same delay as array processing, but no cabinet-specific filtering. This keeps the time alignment with the rest of the system consistent when changing back to conventional processing. Array processing slot data can be updated even while R1 is already online. Using the same project file as before, add or change slot data in ArrayCalc as required and save the project. Then go to the Array Processing System view in R1 and click the Import button above the Sources list. Select the ArrayCalc project and click Import. The new slot data can now be sent to the respective amplifier channels and will then be available for recall on the respective remote view. The most frequent adjustment of array processing during a performance is an adaptation to changing humidity and temperature. Typical gradual changes in temperature and humidity can be performed in real time directly from R1. This is done using the temperature and humidity control, or THC for short. The pale white mark indicates the original values for temperature and humidity. A new combination of values can be set by clicking on the plot. This is indicated by a white crosshair. A new filter based on the current slot is then calculated in real time by the system amplifiers. The currently active values are always shown below the plot. The color-coded areas indicate how accurate this real-time adjustment is in comparison to a recalculation in ArrayCalc. Value combinations in the green area should be sonically identical to ArrayCalc. Value combinations in the yellow area might result in slightly reduced accuracy, and a recalculation in ArrayCalc should be considered.
Your own phrases and use as the basis of the arpeggiator. You could use the Apache SX for that. And if you go to the Greg Undo Q&A videos, we just did a video recently on the different arpeggiators. It kind of walks through it in a bit more detail. Okay, question. Why would the maximum real-time audio processing load peak even when nothing is playing? Many plugins, and we could see this, when we go to your VST performance under your studio menu. So people often, when we're working with, you see the performance characteristic, and I'll hide this. So when working, you may go, okay, nothing is happening, but it's still taking a lot of CPU resources. One of the advantages that you have, and I think you may be able to see it in in the preferences. Let me just check. But with VST3 plugins, they don't actually take any processing power until they actually are doing audio. So a lot of times you may have tracks that are coming in and going out all the different times. So you could say there's a preference here for suspend VST3 plugin processing when no audio signals are received. So when no activity is going on. A VST3 plugin doesn't take CPU cycles. If there's activity going on, that's when it works. So sometimes people will be using different instruments in a verse and a chorus or an intro or ending of a song. So, but they may not all be going at once. So with a VST3 plugin, you could, if it's not passing or processing audio, it's not taking additional CPU resources. So that's why if you're using a lot of older VST2 plugins, that they could be taking up a lot of resources when sitting idle doing nothing. So if you have the option of running the VST3 version, that's a huge reason why you'd want to use that version as opposed to the VST2. Okay. All right, just reading through questions. Thanks, everyone, for wonderful questions. If you've learned any tips or tricks, feel free to subscribe to the channel and give it a like to the video. All right. Okay, so it says, hi from Taiwan. It's probably very early or very late there. So hope everyone is well and healthy. Is it possible to arrange edit window tracks order with mixer window tracks ordered differently? The two, I think, will be synchronized. So if you could, so let me just take a quick look at something and I'll shut my phone off very quickly. Sorry about that. But the two are kind of synchronized. But what some people will do is in the mix console, the order will be the same, but if you go to your visibility options, at this point you could hide channels from the mix console. And I know there's a lot of people that want to be able to just drag within the mix console and rearrange, but that currently doesn't work that way. But if you have like your mix console here, and we had a number of audio tracks, let's just add some random audio tracks that if you select a track, you could move it here and see that reflect on the mixer. But these are kind of tied together. But I know it's a long-standing feature request to just drag and drop from within the mixer. But if you have this view open, which a lot of people do, and you move it in the track window, you could just see that automatically carry over. Okay, are there any ways to create vocoder style effects on a vocal within only Cubase? I've used the vocal correction and event editor to do extreme things to vocals, but any extra methods? I know some people will do pitch correction, so let me just see if I could. So I'll revert this quickly. All right, so I will just come over here and let's put on as an insert and go under pitch shift. I think we go to the pitch correct plugin. All right, and I think if I add a MIDI track, that we could set the vocal input from the pitch correct plugin. So this might be able to, let's just. So listen to our vocal, and I'll just play some MIDI notes. And let's adjust our speed here. And let's say external MIDI note. So maybe adjust the tolerance and speed up. So you can kind of play the melody, and if you wanted to do some more, like shifting stuff, you could, set that up as well. It's not exactly a vocoder, but I know there's a number of freeware vocoders that people run, but currently Cubase doesn't come with a vocoder per se, so that's something that you could play around with some of the pitch shifting. Okay. Okay, so I see, please can you show us how to use Cubase to add an arpeggiator to a hardware synth that doesn't have one itself? Example, if my D50 set to local off, can I play it with a controller keyboard and add arpeggiator? So just, going through and what we showed a little bit earlier, going into like the MIDI inserts and using like the built-in arpeggiator, Apache 5, or the more elaborate Apache SX, you could do that with, and that will send MIDI data out to any MIDI device that you want. Okay. So I see a question. Hey, Greg, is there any reason why the 7th and 9th chords don't work on a chord editor in my Cubase? The 7th and 9ths don't work. I haven't run into that. Let's give it a try, but I seem to have done lots of 7th and 9th chords. So say I wanted to see 9. And let's say C7. So it seems like this is all, just drop some more chords in here randomly. So all those different chords seem to be working fine. So, I don't think that would be a limitation if you had something like Elements, but let me know if you have the Cubase Pro, but I haven't seen any problem with that. Okay, it says, hi, I watched your tutorial on how to set up parallel compression in Cubase, but I can't find a direct routing output option. Racks menu in my version. Can you show us how to set it up in the artist version? So I think the Cubase Artist doesn't have the direct routing. So if you have the artist version and you wanted to do parallel processing, you could kind of do it. We'll set it up for a quick project here. Okay, so often people use like parallel processing for, vocals or drums are very popular. So if I want to take all of these tracks and I had the Cubase Artist, so say I want to take all my drums, I think we could, I'm going to quickly just add 2 group tracks. Okay, I will go to my sends, and then I will select all of my drums. So I will just come right here, hold down the Shift key. If I don't keep hitting the wrong key, sorry. So we'll select all my drums, and I'm going to activate Quick Link, and I will, on my sends, I want to send it all to group 1, all these to group 2, and then let's go ahead and set our varying degrees. So right now we
I kind of fell on my feet really, because it's a gig that I love, because it contains so many elements of stuff I enjoy, because it's got lots of bass and it's got lots of echo, and I like bass and echo. So it's like my ideal gig. And it's quite loud on stage. It's quite loud on stage. That's the guitar. I think it's got to be powerful, dynamic, and you've got to be able to hear the words. And I think everyone in the audience should have the same experience, or as close as possible to the same experience. I want the people at the back to have as good experience as the people at the front. People at the sides to be able to hear the bass. So on a Prodigy show, it's all about the feeling of the sound and the power. Not so much the volume. I think for me, it's got to be a powerful show, which doesn't necessarily equate to volume. I think it should be loud in places, but then dynamic as well. But I want everyone, so when the bass drops, I want everyone in the building to feel the bass, and I want everyone to hear the words. The big thing I did with the Prodigy is we changed from their existing setup, which was EAW 850, and moved to a D&B system, which radically changed the sound for me. We're using the D&B GSL system on this, which is the first system that I've really liked more than VDOS. There's a lot to be said for having big speakers in boxes. Big boxes with big speakers in them. It's really important. You need the bass speakers. So I like that thing of just having bass in the air. So it means that the bass end is traveling to the very top of the arena because it's part of the line array. The line array goes down below 50 hertz. It's a solidity to the sound that goes everywhere because you can't get it all from the subs, and you've got to have that kind of continuity of sound. We've had lots of compliments on this tour from people in the balcony saying they're getting a similar kind of experience, which for me is really important. It's all about that democracy of sound. There's not much to be said between most modern line arrays. They're all pretty good now. I haven't really EQ'd a line array for 10 years. Most sound pretty good. Straight out of the box, you don't really need to do much to them. But this one, I think, it sounds really good, and they've got something called array processing, which is a big difference across the room, in that we can balance the system so it's almost the same volume from the front to the back, which means that everyone is getting that important thing, which is democracy of sound, the same experience. We've got the GSL system on the main hangs. It's quite a new box. It's only been out for about a year. So the company we're using, Wigwam in England, don't own that many boxes. So on the main hang, we've got 16 aside of the GSL boxes. But for the side hangs, we didn't have enough GSL to do the side hangs. So we've got D&B J system on the side. We've got 22 GSL subs on the floor, which are triple 21-inch cardioid subs. So that's one 21-inch speaker rear facing and two forward facing 21s, and the rear one cancels out the sound at the back, so you get a lot of energy at the front, and it's very quiet on stage, which for us actually makes no difference because it's really loud on stage anyway. And then in between the GSL subs, we've got an infra sub. So it goes GSL, infra, GSL, infra, GSL, infra, and then they're all arrayed as one long line. But the infras come in and out, so they can work independent of each other. So I can run the system quite happily just with the GSL subs, and the infras are just coming in, adding extra low end. But it's more of a feeling. You can't really hear them come in, you tend to feel them coming in. It goes down just a tiny bit further. We were debating how far it goes down, but it goes down well below 30 hertz, and it's more about the feeling. And the infra subs get brought in at different points. They're not actually used most of the time until about the third or fourth song, and they get brought in gradually because you've got to kind of build the song. So I use the infras to build up a bit more low end in certain sort of crucial moments. There's a couple of big bass drops early on in, well, sort of to the middle part of the set, and I'll bring in the infra sub, and you can sort of feel it. You can see the audience going, "Ooh, well, what was that?" and that's the kind of me hitting the infrasubs quite hard. But I don't run them all the time because I still want that kind of dynamic. I want that excitement of the bass coming and going. Being loud all the time just isn't interesting. If you're loud all the time, then it's just loud and your ears close down. I want there to be some dynamic and keep as much dynamic as possible. This lovely desk is a Midas XL3. This is my new old desk. I bought this a couple of years ago, and it's only a 32 channel frame, which is quite unusual. Previously I was using a 40 channel frame, which is obviously that's 8 channels, so it's that much wider. I got this because we do lots and lots and lots of festivals, and this fits in between the uprights of the front of house tower on a forklift. So I can forklift it straight into front of house. The other one, you'd have to jiggle the desk, which is hugely dangerous and hard work, and you need crew to do it. This goes straight in. So we've moved to this desk. The channels don't all fit on this desk. So I've actually got, in my rack down here, I've got a digital desk as well. Can you believe it, a digital desk? It's a little Alan Heath Q pack. It's doing extra channels. It's doing some of the drum reverbs, and we've got some weird percussion on the kit. So it's doing all those channels, but most of the active channels that I use during the show are all on the Midas XL3 because it sounds great. It sounds great, and I know how to use it, and it's really easy to use during the show. And the important thing is that it's got knobs on it. It's got knobs that I can turn up and down easily and get to them quickly, because I do lots of kind of dub effects, and I'm usually running 2 or 3 effects during one song, and I need to be able to get to them straight away. So I've got short delays, long delays, and I need to be able to get to that really quickly. And it's really hard on a digital desk because most digital desks have only got 1 assignable control per channel, or 2 maybe. Very few of them have got 4. I mean, I can only do 2 at a time, but I do 2 at a time. And everyone's going, oh, there's a workaround you can use, but it's, you know, I know how to mix on this desk and I know how to do it quickly. It sounds great. And until they can find something that I can mix on as easily as I can mix on this, that sounds as good as this, then I'm just going to use this. So, this is my front of house setup. Got the XL3, and then I've got a side rack with all my effects in it and all my inserts. I don't use that many inserts anymore. I've got just a couple of compressors on the vocals. I've got my DBX 160 on Maxim and one on Keith, and then I've got a second compressor. This is a Al Smart C1, quite an old compressor that goes after the DBX 160 just to catch any transient peaks. We do lots and lots of festivals, and it's a real problem with noise levels, and just capturing the real transient tops really helps keep the overall noise level down. Got 4-channel noise gates that's on the rack tom, the floor tom, and the gong drum. We've got a new gong drum on this tour, which is kind of a 20-inch pancake drum that then goes through the thing over here, which is the DBX subharmonic synthesizer from the 70s, which is an old DBX hi-fi unit, which annoyingly hasn't got a mains light on it, so you never know it's working until the actual synthesized light comes on. The thing about the Prodigy sound is there's not much subtlety in what I do. It's kind of a nuance-free zone. So the drums, the floor toms are supposed to sound like the slamming gates of hell. So they go through my 3 reverbs down here. So I've got 3 Yamaha reverbs, 2 Rev 7s and a Rev 5. I've got 3 because they don't work all the time. They're getting quite old, so I've always got at least 2 on. I've got these on 2 sends, and the third is kind of on a backup, but I keep it running anyway because I like the dense textures you get by using multiple reverbs. So they're all set on slightly different sounds, and they kind of add to that kind of, it's just a big drum sound. It's very kind of 80s drum sound and not at all subtle. And then the gong drum has got no reverb, and that's a really big dead bass drummy type sound. That's got the harmonizer, which comes out of this. Then I've got a couple of compressors on the guitar, and I'm using this Mindprint T-Comp because it's got a valve in it and I think it looks quite cute, but mainly because it's got this thing that says saturate that makes it kind of, I don't know, it makes it slightly warmer, and I just quite like it. I've always been a big fan of these units since I first tried one. Then this is a radial phaser, which I'm using 2 channels of. Because I've got a mic and a DI on the guitar, I've got the radial phaser on the DI, so I can change the phase of the DI to the guitar mic. So I've actually just knocked it slightly off to try and get the best sound, because they're never going to be perfectly in phase with each other, so I'm just going to get it so it sounds best. Then I've also got a channel which is on the infra, and it does the send between the infra and the GSL sub, so I can align them. We align them using the computer, but I like to align them by my ear. So I use the knob and I turn the knob until it sounds better. And I'm a big believer in turning knobs until things sound better. And then you can switch the invert switch in and you can make it sound a lot worse. And when you can get it to sound as bad as it can and then punch the button out, that's the best setting, because that'll be when it sounds the best. Above that I've got a D2 delay, which is kind of my go-to long delay, and I've got that on a tap tempo pedal, so I can just use that tapping during the set, and I tend to have it on the ping pong sound, which is why it's got a big yellow sticker on it there. The thing above it is another TC, and it's quite a cheap TC multi-effect unit, which I use on either the guitar or Keith's vocal. One half of it is used for reverb, and I use it on the cathedral setting, which is a kind of a big reverb. And one song it gets put to maximum and it gives a really big, long, screamy reverb. And then sometimes I use it on the phaser setting, and it's got a really good analog phaser which gets used on the guitar in one song. This is a Dimension D, which is an old kind of 1970s kind of chorusing stereo device, which I use on the guitar to make it sound like a really big guitar, because it's got to sit amongst all the chaos of the Prodigy music and stand up on its own. And by kind of making it big and wide and stereo and thick, I can kind of get it to really sit in with the rest of the tracks. Over here we've got a TC Helicon, which is used mainly for the very angry sound, and that's all I'm going to say about it, except it makes Maxim sound very angry. And then here we've got an Allen Heath Q-Pack, which I mentioned before, which is doing all the kind of off-spill channels, and that's controlled by an iPad. I think these sound great. They're really good. It's really handy to use, but the iPad stops talking to the computer, well, to the desk, if too many people get on the network. Mixing on iPads with wireless it's becoming really popular. The trouble is we've got 10,000 people in an arena all trying to connect to the wireless, and the wireless signal, so we're getting dropouts. We've made it a secret network, but we're still having networking issues, so I'll lose the desk during the show, which is a pain in the neck. Over here I've got a laptop which is running effects. I use plugins. This kind of does really fast delays, so it's going to do a long delay that goes on and on and on. So it goes choo 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 choo. Then I've got my kind of classic distortion sounds, which is a kind of modelled MXR Fuzz Plus and a compressor. And then I've got various other sounds that I use for different songs. My other echo unit is this one, which is a Line 6, which I always have on the ping pong sound, and that's for doing the type sounds. And I've also got a Chaos Pad, which is used on the guitar for kind of filtering effects. These are the new sort of TC boxes, which these are the controls for the plugins. So the plugins live on the computer, and this gives me access to the controls. So I've got like a 2290 delay, and I can change the tap tempo. So it's pretty much doing the same as the D2. And this always goes to me to all the shows. So this is part of my fly package. So I don't necessarily use this very much on shows where I've got all my equipment, but if I have to fly in somewhere and we're using a rented desk and rented gear, I've got all the delays and everything I need in a kind of handy suitcase package. And then we've got a noise meter. We've always mixed with it. Well, I've mixed with a noise meter for over 10 years now, because every show we do is a festival. Pretty much most of our live work is festivals, and there's always a dB level. In most countries there's a dB level, so I have to be very aware of what kind of level I'm mixing to. So I've had this for quite some time, and it's easy to mix to. It gives me a countdown, so I know when I'm losing green blocks I'm getting very close to the limit. It means I can pull it back so that I can then bring it up again, so I can actually reach a crescendo. Because the worst thing is going flat out and then realising at the end of the gig you've got to turn down. I'd rather be turning down as I go up and then going back up again, turning down a bit and then going back up again, so that when it comes to smack my bitch up, I can turn it up full and I know I've got the headroom to actually do a big crescendo at the end of the set. To my left, I've got the kind of control system, which is controlling the system. So because it's D&B, it's quite integrated in. We've got the array calc, where you actually work out how the system's designed. So we can look at the venue and how the venue's arrayed. And then there's a network system called R1, which tells all the amplifiers what they are, what they're doing. And all the amplifiers on this system are all D&B D80 amplifiers, and they're all networked together. So we've got a network setter here. I do use a Callisto though, mainly because of this amazing thing here, which is the app that it runs. This gives me a chance to look at all the inputs and get an overview of the system, which is so handy. It's a great thing. So if I choose, I can just EQ parts of the system really easily. I'm just trying to think one that I've got actually EQ on. Not really. Oh, there's. So infrasubs, I've done a massive boost at sort of 40 hertz, and it's really good because I can control the whole system with an easy iPad, rather than trying to get my system tech to do it. So I can do most of the stuff on the fly during the show, which is really convenient for me, and especially when I'm doing festivals where I haven't actually got system tech with me and I'm using the festival tech, I can pretty much I can EQ the system without having to go to the system tech to sort stuff out for me. So it's just really handy. Then we've got a digital network that sends it all down to the racks either side of the stage. We've got two quite big amp sort of dollies, which have got all the amplifiers for one side and all the amplifiers for the other side, and the same on stage, and it's all networked together, so it all works pretty easily, well, pretty quickly really. So once it leaves my desk, it enters the digital domain and it stays digital all the way till it comes out the speakers. A huge thumpunduous level, hopefully. We take our own subs into festivals. We always tour with D&B infra subs, so we always bring in extra sub and we ask them to provide extra sub, and we ask them to provide much bigger side fills, and we carry our own centre keyboard fill. So we always turn up with extra speakers anyway to try and prodigisize the festival, so it kind of gets that Prodigy feel. But most festivals these days are pretty good. You know, the standard of PA system is a lot better across the world. Most of the shows we do at festivals, it's quite unusual really. We probably do 2 weeks touring a year, most years, and the rest is festivals, and we'll be doing festivals for 6 or 7 months. And it's pretty good. The audience usually go away smiling, and that's, you know, sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's a lot harder. But most of the time, you know, I think we walk out having provided a good show. I think they always do a good show. It's a good band to go and see. You get your money's worth. Loads of subs at the front, and they're going to get you. Wherever you sit, they're going to get you.